to Red Recon, presented by Cantex Roofing. I'm Clint Scott. He's Rob Bro.
I'm Clint Scott. You're Rob Bro.
The Red Raiders have yet to go undefeated in non-conference play under head coach Joey McGuire, but have as good of a chance as any in 2025. In a season full of high expectations, the Red Raiders will see all of their non-con games at home. No road games, no ranked opponents. That's also a first in Coach McGuire's tenure. The season kicks off August 30th with an FCS foe. Arkansas Pine Bluff is 0-12 all-time against FBS opponents. The Golden Lions are coming off a challenging 2024 where they finished 3-9. Speaking of challenging seasons, the next opponent is Kent State. The Golden Flash's last win was on September 16th, 2023. Their last FBS win was the season finale in 2022. They're starting out with more than just challenges on the field, but also on the staff. Kent State will be coached by interim head coach Mark Carney, who was elevated from the offensive coordinator position after firing Kenny Burns in April. The last non-conference matchup will be September 13th against the Oregon State Beavers. It's year 2 under Trent Bray. In his first season at the helm, Oregon State went 5-7. They'll have some new faces on the roster, bringing in 14 players from the transfer portal, including quarterback Malik Murphy, who started all 12 games for Duke last season. The Red Raiders and Beavers have met one time in their history, a 15-14 win for Tech in Lubbock back on September 26, 1959. You don't have to dig quite as far to find the last time the Red Raiders started the season with 3 straight home games, but you do have to go back to 2005. That season resulted in a Cotton Bowl appearance and a 9-3 overall record.
Talking non-con today, of course, we've gone through, Clint, the position groups, the coordinators, the team. We've learned all about the Red Raiders, but who is on the schedule? And at the risk of making this whole video moot, all 3 games are at home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a rip who's coming. You should be, and probably need to be, 3-0.
So I think that this is funny because as soon as the non-con came out, not excited. I'm excited to watch Texas Tech football.
Certainly.
But if you were just going individual matchups and you look at Pine Bluff, you look at Kent State, and you look at Oregon State, especially when you add them all at home, I mean, which one are you really just on paper getting revved up for? And this isn't a bad thing, by the way. I wish for the entertainment, especially with this squad you have, I do wish you had and this is where it's tricky, I wish you had a Power 4 team on here, but Oregon State was supposed to be that. Originally this was, and this is not your schedule's fault of how things are right now. This wasn't trying to duck on a schedule, Oregon joke. It wasn't trying to make this as soft as possible.
Yeah, it's not one of those who's your daddy moments.
Yeah, but now,
Indiana.
Yeah.
We got it. I hate that I explained it.
I don't. Shout out Signetti.
Signerty, more like.
It's like, what, ducking Virginia? That's a whole side thing. Oh, we're making it easier. Well, you could have just played Virginia then. I think with these opponents that you have coming in, that you could wrap up this video without breaking down the teams and just like the should part, and it's like you should just beat all 3 of these teams. And I think when you look at, you've yet to have a perfect non-con under Joey McGuire. Now, first off, it doesn't help that you have played some really tough opponents. So just jog all your memory if you need it. Year 1, your tough one was North Carolina State. That was at North Carolina State. That was a top 25 North Carolina State team. And then they had a Leary injury at quarterback later on, and the wheels fell off a little bit. But at that time, a really good North Carolina State team, 27-14.
And that's Donovan Smith's first start, big pressure on the road.
Mm-hmm. Really good environment, too.
Yes.
So you understand, right? And then year 2, you start off with the gut punch. That's the double overtime loss to Wyoming. And then you follow that up with a really good performance against Oregon that just comes up short, and you give it away late. 38-30, there's the second loss, beat Tarleton State, whatever. Last year, you don't lose it, but it's the ACU game where it's an adventure, and then you go to Washington State, who I think was a little bit better than I don't think anyone said that was going to be an easy game with it being on the road.
Right.
But you still went, and even looked at what they did in the end, so went, man, That's if you could play that again, you could, but that's not how things work, and this is part of the problem, right? And so you're 5-4 overall in non-conference in the last 3 years. You're 1-4 against quality opponents. Your only good quality win was that double overtime at home against a solid top 25 Houston team in year one. But you've had so many slow starts. You haven't shown up for entire games. You've taken your foot off the gas in some of these, and now you look and looking back at these games kind of grounded me a little bit when I was doing research for today's episode and just trying to refresh my memory. And not that I'm all of a sudden worried about the 3 that you have here, but it's just a good reminder of why there has been built up frustration early. And so when you have a game like when you lose to Baylor, or go back 2 years ago when you lose your conference opener to West Virginia, and I was like, why do we remember those games other than just them being horrible? Like, why are they so much worse? And I was like, well, you already had frustration built up, and you were waiting to explode at something angry, and you might have a couple wins before you get to that frustrating loss, or like the West Virginia, you might just roll right into it, and then it makes it feel 10 times worse. And so, especially this year, if you're going to be a championship team, this is a look in the mirror moment, and this could be way better opponents, and I would feel the same way. Like, you need to be 3-0 with this squad if you are going to be a Big 12 contender.
Even with all of that, you go back to Murray State, 63-10, 41-3 against Tarleton State, and then last year I kind of don't even put ACU into this. That's an FCS playoff team. Mm-hmm. But North Texas, 66-21. So you have had 3 non-conference games that have been really good. Mm-hmm. You need to have 3 like that this year, and certainly the first 2. I mean, if you're ACUing Arkansas Pine Bluff or Houstoning from pre-Big 12 days, they were a top 25 team too, but not really by the end of the year. And they had a lot of injuries on that team. But if you're going to double overtime with Kent State or Oregon State, mm-hmm. like Oregon State, I can live with a 2-possession game. Maybe it's 3 possessions at the end, but like a 2-possession game for most of the second half. I'm fine with living like that, especially if your offense is playing a little ball control and it's not just like you're not scoring big drives. It's, hey, you settle for a couple of field goals and, hey, one player here or there, but the defense is playing really good, and they held Oregon State to 14. It was just 24-14 for a stretch. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to be upset with that. But if it's 24-14 against Kent State, if it's 24-14 against Arkansas Pine Bluff in the fourth quarter, like, those are situations where wins aren't good enough, like ACU, that you're going to have a lot of questions about this team. And maybe that's unfair because there's 2 new coordinators, and we've talked about all the new faces on defense and the new faces on the offensive line. But I think this team should have unfair expectations early on because of the big expectations you have for the final weeks of the season.
I think especially in weeks 1 and 2, I don't think it is unfair because, yes, if you were playing, a tougher team out of the gate, or in week 2, or even in week 3 as you ramp up, if you had another Oregon situation where you had what was going to be a top 10 team coming in, or just top 25 team, that'd be one thing. But I understand, and I think part of my concern for this year is so many new faces, the chemistry conversation. But not weeks 1 and 2. That should be a Jimmy's and Joe's conversation, where even if it's not clean chemistry-wise yet, or you're trying to get things going, you should be able to be. And I know people might be watching this and going like, "Oh, typical Tech fan. They just think they should dominate it." But no, the roster you have put together and the aspirations you have, these are the type of teams that should not be remotely a game. And it's not even for. Let's start with Pine Bluff, right? ACU was a legit FCS team. I've heard talk, and I've gone back and forth. Boy, it might be a coin flip of who the worst team is you see between Kent State and Pine Bluff. And Kent State has been the worst FBS team, and they're a mess. We'll tell you about their story here in a little bit. But Pine Bluff is not an ACU FCS team coming in. That is an FCS team that has struggled and and they didn't get any better in the offseason. And so, like, if you're going, hey, rank your 3 games in toughness, I think it does shake down where, hey, your least tough is Pine Bluff, your second least tough is Kent State, and they're a little close, and then third is Oregon State, although that's not, I mean, it's a big jump, but it's not a big jump into the territory of a threat, because the other side, I would say, is, okay, now instill a 1 to 10 number of confidence that you're going to win those games. Just win them. It's 10 by every single one of them. And it needs to be 10. Again, this is part of it. It's not arrogance or cockiness. It's if they're not, if any of those games are going truly down to the wire, then it's hard to imagine you picking things up in time by the time you go to Utah. Or, big games that may and probably will shape the season, like taking care of business against BYU all of a sudden is a little daunting, even though that's a little farther down the stretch. Like, you've had such slow starts. We like slogans. Like, my slogan, at least early, is no slow starts. Yeah. Just go your Jimmy's and Joe's conversation and just be better than them.
Yeah. If you don't go 3-0 in this non-conference, I don't know that Joey will. Because even if you look at the next 2 or 3, there are similar non-conferences coming up. But then you start getting back into Mississippi States and Arkansas and Oregon's in the next decade. And I hope Joey's here for the next decade. But if he's not going 3-0 in some non-conferences, that's another issue, right? Even if he is winning Big 12 games. I think you will go 3-0 this year.
Yes, I do too.
Arkansas Pine Bluff's last 2 Power 5 games. Last season at Arkansas, you know the score, you've seen it, 70-0. Mm-hmm. They did not play a Power 4 team the previous year. They played Tulsa, which was 42-7 or something. And then they played Oklahoma State the season before, 63-7.
You know what's worse for them too? Look at those numbers over the past 2 seasons. And so you have Alonzo Hampton, and he's in year 3. So far, he's been a part of those 2 losses, 5-18 record overall, and that's getting into other FCS opponents there. 3-9 last year. Even with the teams that were going up in those beatdowns, they have lost some of their best players. Their quarterback, Mekhi Hagan's, now at Alabama A&M. He was pretty solid. They had a standout receiver, Giovanni Gibson, that I think everyone that was paying attention over there to Pine Bluff was going, he's not going to be at Pine Bluff next year. Where's he at this year? Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And roster-wise, it is a little bit of a mystery when you get into the FCS stuff. As we record the podcast right now, the active 2025 roster still hasn't been posted on their own website. So you have to do a little homework of transfer portal and taking a guess. They do keep their top rusher, B.J. Curry, who I think is a nice piece. They have an all-conference second-teamer at defensive back in Herman Brister. And then I think they really like their place kicker, who's got some preseason honors too. But that's the shiny pieces of the roster, and even then, that's all SWAC. And if there's any indication from last year, it'll be DJ Stevenson at quarterback, very limited starts or limited stats. Maybe I think a redshirt freshman in Landon Holcomb. But even then, all of this is just trying to replace the best pieces with backups that couldn't crack the roster last year. And I just don't think it's getting any better for the Golden Lions. And so it just turns to you, and it's like, if you have another ACU pucker situation with this team, I don't know, buckle your seatbelts, get ready for a very bumpy ride.
They only scored 23 points a game last year, and that is against that SWAC conference. Mm-hmm. Now, they did struggle in the non-con, but there's not a lot of games where they're going out and putting it on people. So I think we've already spent too much time on Pine Bluff, in all honesty, because it should be a game that's open and shut by the first quarter. And I hope to see a lot of Will Hammond, and I hope to see a lot of John Curry and Jaden Cofield and the Morgans and the Escaras and the Ramon Edwards that we've talked about, and the Holton Hendricks and all these guys that we've talked about in these previews, this is the time that we want them to shine.
Yeah, I completely agree. So then you move on to week 2. I think Kent State is arguably one of the most, and not in a good way, one of the most interesting stories over the last 5 years in college football. Program clearly is a mess right now. You know, they haven't won a game since September 16th, 2023. They're on a 21-game losing streak. On top of it, they fired their head coach, Kennan Burns, in April, as he was misusing school expenditures. Their interim is Mark Carney. He's the OC. They're going to do a, quote, national search at the end of the season. Do you remember the Sean Lewis saga?
At Pine Bluff?
Kent State.
Oh, yes. That they booted him, and he came back to the walk, and players were giving him high fives and hugging him?
No. So Sean Lewis, this goes back to the hiring of Kennan Burns, who just got booted. Sean Lewis was the head coach at Kent State. Did pretty well there, too.
Worked him up into the FBS.
5 seasons, 3 of them winning. His last one, he goes 5-7. He's not forced out. Instead, he's the one who takes the OC job with Deion Sanders year 1 as the offensive coordinator.
Okay.
And then in Deion's first year, they're fighting on the sidelines.
Yes.
He gets play calling taken away from him. It's like, you got this guy away from a head coaching gig to be an OC, which is kind of a rarity, even jumping up from FC. Like, that's just not the ladder we think of.
Right.
It turns into a clown show on the sidelines. This is the last year Colorado Pac-12 version. Now he's the coach at San Diego State. That's the starting point of everything that's just unraveled over there at Kent State. And I just think all of that together, and then you add in kind of the, them being a punching bag. Like, I legitimately think if you put last year's ACU team, swap them with Oregon State, ACU would be and this isn't just because they came here and scored 50 points on you. I just think talent-wise and also just structure-wise and how they're coached, ACU would be your toughest game on the schedule. Now, I don't think it's low enough to be like, oh, well, maybe we should think about this between Pine Bluff and Kent State. Again, this is just a side conversation that doesn't really mean anything,
right.
But I just think Kent State is so interesting for so many reasons, but none of them are good.
Yeah, not only is Kent State a bad football team, they're a bad program right now. They're just in disarray. So as much as you should beat Arkansas Pine Bluff, I think you should also beat Kent State. Maybe just with the players they have at the FBS level, it's a little more competitive. But again, Kent State is not a program who has won. Period.
They're a little bit like Pine Bluff, too, where you get into their roster a little bit more, and all of their best players, at least offensively and weapon-wise, are not there, and they're trying to replace them. They do have an interesting Fordham transfer, C.J. Montez. He's projected to be the starter. They also have Devin Cardman. He took some snaps last year. He was the original starter, got injured, but neither of their top 2 rushers are back. Neither of their top 2 receivers are back. On top of it, they've either transferred or graduated out. BetMGM, do you want to know what their over-under win total is?
Kent State's win total is at 2.5.
They're the only school in the country at 1.5 under.
And they play Merrimack. So there's the one.
It's just like,
wow.
Oh man, and this isn't like us taking unneeded shots or anything. I hope. Hey, maybe this is where Nick Saban comes back and coaches his alma mater, Golden Flashes.
They were 0-12 last year. They lost to their Power 5 opponents 55-24. That's Pitt. 71-0 against Tennessee and 56-0 against Penn State. The previous year, their record 1-11. UCF was decent that year, 56-6. Arkansas, 28-6. That's kind of an interesting finish. And then their other non-con game here, 53-10 Fresno State. So this is a program I don't expect to be any better this year. This is not that 5-7 team that was competitive for a minute against a Washington squad or an Oklahoma squad 33-3.
And that's that final Sean Lewis year.
It's not the team that was competitive against Georgia 39-22, and that's hardly competitive. This is 2 years removed from that, and they have gone quickly, sharply downhill. I don't expect them to figure it out this year.
Well, and I don't think the university expects them to figure out this year. That's why there isn't even a, hey, we'll look at our interim and see how we feel about them. We're going to be searching all year. They said a national search at the end of the season. They're going to be searching all year. At least that's probably task number one over there for Kent State's athletic director.
Well, they're just trying to find who the heck would even want to coach there right now with what they've done to the last two coaches, or at least the last two coaches, the one that took over for, you said Burns? I don't remember his name, but he took over, and then he got unceremonious. They fired two guys since then.
What a weird.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Oregon State. So I think you have two schools to start that struggled and then I think got somehow a little worse. You have the interesting case of Oregon State. So clearly this should be the most competitive game. I think a question is just how non-competitive can you make it look? And I'm interested in this Oregon State team because it could be your first test, but it also should be one of those easing into the first tests in a school year sort of thing where it's like a wink, wink. I hope you all studied. That's, especially with this being 2 games in, that should be what this game looks like if I'm putting my expectations on it. And the Beavers, for what it's worth, went 5-7 last year, just like Washington State did 2 years ago before you faced them. But obviously there's a bunch of differences, which also, by the way, this Oregon State team beat Washington State last year at 38-35 and upset the Cougars. But Trent Bray, I really like Trent Bray. He's in his second season as the head coach. He's a former player, former linebacker. He was a really good linebacker in the early 2000s as a Beaver. And just again to go to Vegas, do you want to guess on what their over-under is, or do you know it?
I did not look up their over-under. I would assume...
Here's your guessing game. Guess now, and Josh will put it right here.
Put it in the comments. Guess in the comments.
Give him a second.
4.5.
6.5.
Okay.
So Vegas has them taking a step forward, but not a huge step. And I think that's how I view the Beavers. They were not a good team last year. The passing game really, really struggled. But if I viewed it through the lens of either a Power 4 school or just an Oregon State fan, here's some things that I like. It's just some things that, first off, you have to like their run. Well, you don't have to like their running back, but if you're an Oregon State fan, you have to like their running back. Anthony Hankerson is a guy that would have gotten a lot of portal looks had he left, and I give him credit for sticking around, or credit to Bray to keeping him around. That's a guy with over 1,000 yards, 15 touchdowns last year, and he's also pretty decent as a pass-catching back when needed. Like, he is legit. I like their lead receiver, Trent Walker. I don't think he would necessarily be, let's say if you put him on your roster, he wouldn't be threatening to be the lead guy, but he'd be a producer for sure. And they also have another interesting receiver, Darius Clemens, who will be asked to take on a bigger role. I like that they addressed the quarterback spot, and, at least for portal rankings, went and got an interesting name in Malik Murphy. Yes, that Malik Murphy from Texas and last year from Duke. They also have a former Missouri transfer, Jabari Johnson in the mix. I also like that defensively they've got some key returners at linebacker and secondary. But if you flip to what I don't like, there's more on that side. Because then you go, okay, well, let's start with Malik Murphy. Inconsistent in his career. Started all 12 games for Duke, but he's a big quarterback that very inconsistent in the passing game, tendency to turn it over, does not run at all. I think he uses his legs to keep plays alive, but does not run, isn't asked to run. I'm not sure if that's what you add to this roster to make it better. at least again from the Power 4 lens. But also then I'd be worried about the defense as a whole. Transfer portal class, not enough of an impact coming in to make that unit better. And then I would just be worried about the trenches on both sides, offensive line and defensive line. Last year, pressure-wise, there was none. 7 sacks on the season. I don't think they got any better there. So I say all this to go, okay, when you're scouting them, that's what I'm looking for of how to beat them. It's shut down offensively Anthony Hankerson, and then, I don't know, don't let Malik Murphy have a career day passing.
Malik Murphy is very interesting. That is a great ad for Oregon State. And you look in the portal, and they have backup running back, I guess, from Louisiana Tech. They got a James Madison kid, a Nevada kid. And then you have a Miami tight end, a Nebraska edge rusher, a USC linebacker, a West Virginia corner, a BYU tight end.
Mm-hmm. I think both of those tight end additions are interesting.
A UCF offensive tackle and a UCF guard. So you go down on the Beavers list of players in the portal, and it's, they got some Power 5 talent. And this is a Power 5 kind of transitional roster.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I am adamant that you have to beat Kent State and Arkansas Pine Bluff by 50, I don't mind seeing a competitive game against Oregon State. I think they can be competitive. Are you better than them? Yes. Did you also get a bunch of Power 5 transfers and already have Power 5 talent? Yes. Do you have a better roster? Yes. Would I take Baron Morton over Malik Murphy? Yes. Would I take Quentin Joyner over their running back? Yes.
Yes.
Our edges, their edges, yes. Every position, yes. I think you have a better team. Should win. But again, this is the kind of program in a transitional period. By the way, they played Washington State twice this year because they couldn't get another game. It would look bad to lose, but I think it's a team that can come in here and not as much as last year with the Leach stuff have you circled on their schedule. Mm-hmm. And not as much as last year because Washington State didn't really have another big-time opponent beyond Washington. Oregon State, looking down their schedule, they play California the week before, or in week 1. They play Fresno State the week before you. They play Oregon the week after you. They also play Houston, Wake Forest, and then again Washington State twice. So it's not like you're the only Power 5 team on their schedule like Washington State last year.
You're not their Super
Beyond
Bowl.
Washington, yes.
And obviously they have a baked-in one with the rivalry game against Oregon.
But last year with Washington State, it was such an opportunity.
Yeah.
And they were mad at Washington, so it wasn't as big a deal to them. And they were all in on beating Texas Tech. I don't see that in Lubbock this year for Oregon State. I think it's just going to be another contest.
I think for Oregon State, the way that I view the game, because I'm with you. I think they'll be feisty. Certainly early, but can you snuff that out? And yes, I'm not going to be upset if it's competitive, but if it's also not a double-digit win at home, I'm not exactly going to be just thrilled with the result. You just can't. This game can't be wonky. And again, I just keep going back to this is more to say about you and what a Big 12 championship run doesn't start at Utah. And this goes into no slow starts. A Big 12 championship run starts against Pine Bluff. And, it's also not that you're starting out with Oregon State. You have a couple of games to get going and find some momentum. And if there is, you're looking to gel maybe a little bit better, you've got a couple games under your belt. I still think Oregon State, in the Jimmy's and Joe's conversation, you should be able to be pretty vanilla offensively and defensively and win this game. You should still, just from your explosive players, have some big plays without trickeration or, maybe disrupting things without disguising a lot of stuff. This is where you are supposed to be better, where you're not having to outcoach a plucky underdog coming into Lubbock.
Right.
But for Oregon State, I do think that they will be better this year. And I also don't think that this is, if you went just from a roster standpoint, and I know last year's game that you dropped in Washington State was on the road, but this isn't an Oregon State team with a John Mateer that nobody knows about yet and now is playing at Oklahoma, or a Wayshawn Parker who you'll see in Utah, or you go to their lead receiver that no one was really talking about because Josh Kelly had just left and then gets drafted in the third round by the Patriots.
Yep.
And so I think that this Oregon State team is not quite to that level. And also the biggest thing is you have them at home. This is ACU gets to use the word wonky again, clearly, but still at home against opponents that I don't think are quality opponents, you've taken care of business. And so just do that 3 times. And I don't think that's going to be any different from Oregon State, but obviously you're viewing that game differently than you are Pine Bluff and Kent State.
Let me ask you this, because...
Or as fans, you should be.
Yeah.
I hope that they're taking the opponent seriously.
Yep.
No one respects Oregon State and Joey McGuire.
Yep. So I think this Kent State game got done, in the last 2 years because you kind of added it late.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you added it when they were 5-7 and competitive, they're not that right now. Does it worry you that you're not going to be battle tested heading to Utah with this non-conference?
No. And this is why. Because you're not leaning on young players for the most part. You are, if this was, hey, you feel really good about this roster, but but like maybe half of it is sophomores and juniors or even seniors that haven't really played all that much and have been key backups, but you're excited about. That's not what this roster is. You have veterans who've played so much college football everywhere on the roster, both sides of the ball. I think that leans into where your expectations are coming from. Because it'd be one thing if it was all like you're just bringing in a bunch of young guys. Like all of them were Quentin Joyner types, where you're excited, but they're still looking for more reps,
or
and you're going off of projection. Yes,
yeah.
And so I expect from talented veterans to be able to go every single week, and just because maybe the non-conference, which I think was on 3, had you as like the 10th easiest non-conference schedule, and take that for whatever you will. We haven't played it down. I know we're saying the same thing.
I haven't looked at everyone else's, but I think that's low.
You think it should be like top 5?
Yeah.
I think
I need to look around at the rest, but
I think we'll end up saying that for sure when we look back. But
I mean, Utah is going to be prepared with at UCLA, Cal Poly at home, and at Wyoming, which Wyoming is not the same Wyoming as it was 2 years ago, but I agree that this is a veteran team, and it shouldn't affect. If you lose at Utah, it's because Utah beats you, hopefully.
Yes,
and not that you that you kind of gave it away or were unprepared or were not ready for the moment.
Where you look back 4 weeks later, and all of a sudden you've turned it on, and you look back and you're like, how did we lose to this Utah team?
Yeah.
Like one of those situations.
I mean, even that Wyoming team won 9 games, I think, that year. I mean, that was a good Wyoming team. That Oregon team was good.
When you're looking at that Utah non-conference, the only thing that raises an eyebrow is you have 2 road games. UCLA, unless Iamaleava turns into a team player and all of a sudden they also upgraded a bunch of other positions, Utah's got a shot to go 3-0 as well and maybe make it look easy too with 2 road games. That Wyoming team, like you said, that is a far cry from the Wyoming team you saw a couple years ago. I mean, the wheels have really fallen off. Of course, when you have a coach there as long as you did, sometimes that happens, right? And then teams like that, those are who the transfer portal has beaten up the most.
Yeah.
If you're not an established Mountain West school like a Boise State who consistently can bring in talent.
UCLA also had a ton of guys leave. I know this is not a Utah podcast talking about their non-con, but
So
3-0. 3-0.
3-0. The long way to answer that question is if you're going to be the team that you need to be, I'm not worried that this. I hope this looks easy.
Give me 3 scores. You reserve the right to change them when we get there.
I am going to say right now, I'm going to go 65-3 Pine Bluff.
Wow, that's a big loss.
Oh, 65-3 Red Raiders over Pine Bluff. I'll go 60-7 Kent State.
Yeah.
Over Kent State. Now you're in my head.
Yeah.
I'll go 49-20 over Oregon State.
70-0, 56-7, 42-24.
Okay.
And I'll be upset at the 24, but
yeah.
get over it. I'll get over it.
I don't think you will. It hasn't even happened
No, I'll
yet.
get over it.
I don't think you can get over it if you're already upset about it. Something that hasn't happened. You're like shower argument.
My dream, right? My dream. You do that too?
All the time.
My dream.
Most of the thing about arguments here. On
My
this
dream
podcast.
is a 70-0. 70-0. And then like a
70-0.
No, like a 24-3. Like I want 3 dominant defensive performances. And then offensively, if you just control the game against Oregon State, I would be pumped about that.
I'm already annoyed if you only scored 20 points against Oregon State.
Well, probably so.
I'll get over it.
Probably so. Probably so. But
I'm not over it.
I want just massive wins in the first 2.
Can I give you my... It's always tough when you go, hey, what should your expectations be? What should you be looking for? Because I do think that my ultimate goal for these 3 games is to not learn much.
Yeah.
Oregon State maybe a little bit, but I think like if you go, okay, well, what are some things you can look for that maybe you can learn if you're really looking for it? And I think something that we talked about last week, crisp and clean special teams play.
Yep.
How in any phase, I don't want any slip-ups. If you have makeable field goals, it's one thing if you get stopped.
Holds.
It's one thing if you miss a field goal, like, hey, we're up and we're just trying a 55-yarder. You don't make it, okay, not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But if you're doing 30-yarders and you're clanking those, or if you're fumbling in punt return or kick return, or if you're giving up, like, consistently fairly big returns, where just, I don't want to see any of that.
Yeah.
And I do want to see, again, to go back to the vanilla, without having to show things, I want to see quite a few explosive plays. Like I want to see 20-plus yards through the passing game, running. I don't care where it's from or who it is, but I want to see multiple explosive plays over that 3-game stretch. And then defensively, same thing. Without having to show your cards as much, just show me that you can wreak havoc from your defensive line first. Just, yes, don't give a big pass and all that stuff. Just be perfect. That's all I'm asking, right?
Right.
But specifically from your defensive line, with how they've accurately been built up, but how they've been built up, prove it.
Yeah.
Especially quarters 1 through 2, and hopefully you don't see them in 3-4. Bailey, Height, Hunter, Gil Howard, Holmes, Cofield.
Yeah.
Dude, go get them.
Yeah.
Go defensively. Go end this game in the first half.
Yes.
And then just trust the offense is going to take care of business.
Yeah, health, first and foremost.
Sure.
Turnovers on both sides of the ball, 0 on the offense. I don't know, 9. Or take 3, right? 9 defensively. And then, just crisp special teams. I would prefer to not kick any field goals and have no idea what Upton Bellefonte looks like in week 4.
Red hair.
And I don't need the football team to be perfect through these 3 weeks. I do expect some struggles against Oregon State. I don't expect too many struggles against the first 2, but there is an opportunity here to just look competent. And that's all I'm asking.
When I was going through it, really, the episode I figured would turn into this. Which, by the way, next week we'll get into Utah, Houston, in Kansas. That'll be two wildly different conversations between this week to next week.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I just simplified, the whole point is we're trying to get into why we feel this way. It's just like, just give me 2 blowouts in a game that looks relatively easy, in that order.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's asking too much.
Right.
Let's get into the fan question of the week. It's not a fun one, but for the sake of the episode, it does make sense with the theme. And you can give us a question. My Twitter, Rob's Twitter, Double T973's Twitter. Just put it on Red Raider Recon. Or, again, we appreciate all the YouTube likes and comments. Subscribe. But also you can leave us a question there, and we can pull that from last week. This week's fan question was, what was the most disappointing non-conference loss under Joey McGuire?
Okay. So we go NC State,
NC State.
Wyoming, Oregon, Washington State. Those are the 4?
There's your 4 selections.
I've got a bit of a hot take.
Okay. I'm always down for hot takes.
If I expand it to what's the most disappointing non-conference game under Joey McGuire,
You go last year's start?
I would still have Wyoming first.
Okay.
Because that, to me, derailed an entire season.
Mm-hmm.
I know you got back on track. You got to a bowl game. You won a bowl game.
You had to grind to get to a bowl game.
You still had a winning record in conference play. Like, all of those things are still true. But you might have beat Oregon with a little more confidence. Or if you just figure out Taj Brooks during the Wyoming game, that he's your best player, maybe you figure out a little earlier and you use him against Oregon more. That is the most disappointing loss and game in the non-conference era for Joey McGuire. Number 2 would be ACU. And I understand that you won that game, but again, it was so disappointing and disheartening for the fan base. I got over it pretty quickly, but for the fan base, they talked about it on the chat line and the comments and the call-in show, the Coors Light postgame show, Double T97.3 Coors Light postgame show.
Listen to the pregame show too.
Over and over all year long. So I think for the fan base, me personally, Wyoming, because I drove to Wyoming and I drive back by myself.
I think about everybody that that drove to that.
And then that ACU game would be 2 for me because Washington State wasn't necessarily disappointing. It would be 3 for me because I think Baron Morton just had such a bad game in that atmosphere, and you just couldn't figure it out without Taj Brooks. And that does give me a little worry, a little pause for this season, which we really haven't discussed. We can as we move through it. We talked about it in the running back video. But And then you have Oregon, I think, would be next for me because you had them on the ropes. And you had the ball driving with time. And Tyler Shuck just threw it to the other team, like gifted it behind the line of scrimmage to the other team. And then NC State was zero disappointment for me because that was a really good game, a really good team, and there was a pick 6 there from Donovan that was really frustrating. But I kind of saw like, oh, we might have a pretty decent team on our hands because you're competitive on the road, and I really like what Joey did. Now, there were some issues in the fourth quarter of that game that had some people disappointed, that it didn't feel like you were trying to win at the end of the game. If you remember back to that you kind of let the foot off the gas because, hey, we don't want to put Barron in there. We don't want to put and then we did put Barron in there, and it was like, oh, well, why put Barron in if Donovan's the guy? And then it was just all kind of what's going on here? So I would rank them like that.
So I like that you added just disappointing game. I'll go the other direction. And I agree, North Carolina State's number 5. The only thing I would add into that, and this isn't like why you lost the game, but just something that I remember about that game is that was our first dip into those that don't like analytics in football. Oh, man.
Yeah.